I'm Heather, and for my final presentation, I'm going to talk about the case study that I was given to help us dissect some of the theories and different things that we learned throughout our textbook and throughout the class curriculum this quarter, which is a lot. And it was really fun to actually apply these to a case study. And I feel like I was able to really learn a lot of things that I thought that I already knew, but with especially to structuration theory. And so I'll explain that a little bit more. To give you a little overview of the case, it's called There's a New Sheriff in Town, and it's about a female deputy named Nicole, and she works for the sheriff department as a deputy in the records department. And the other focus of the case study is the fact that there's a new sheriff that's been elected as the sheriff officially. She won by a landslide against a male sheriff who actually was awaiting civil trial for a sexual harassment, I guess you would say, allegations, because it was against several of the female deputies. And even though she was positioned to do a good job and was elected into it by, I said, a landslide, people still doubted her capabilities because she was a woman. I think police forces in general, but this police force specifically, as it was described, was incredibly bureaucratic, hierarchical, male-dominated. Very few females made rank or got near the amount of opportunities as the men did. It was harder for them to progress. And so it kind of talks about that, kind of a day in the life of Nicole, and then it talks about how she's going to meet with the sheriff at the end and talk about how to maybe remedy some of these issues. This case qualified for the bureaucratic theory, for me to kind of dissect it as that. That's a focus within the classical perspective of organizational communication. It's centered on interpersonal relationships, task proficiency, structured, on rules, procedures, very top-down, page 68 to cite that. I'm going to examine the structuration theory, which is a theory within the interpretive, I guess, component, facet of organizational communication. It's basically, do people have free will, or are they determined by their environments? How people's actions create structure and perpetuate it and reproduce it. Page 107 to cite. From chapter 8, I connected organizational culture, which is the collective culmination of the individuals within the organization and their identities, which create meaning and shared assumptions that mold everyday life. Page 237 to cite. And then organizational identification is how you socially identify within the group. Page 240. From chapter 10, realistic job previews are how you can gain an accurate or inaccurate perception of the position which you're applying for. Page 291. And then role negotiations occur when an employee attempts to negotiate with their supervisor about communicated expectations and kind of individualize their place within the organization or the organization, I guess, too, trying to restructure it a little bit. Page 303, organizational cynicism occurs when there's a belief the organization doesn't have integrity. Page 398, and then to cite, page 409, I'll talk about ostracism, when you exclude someone or make them feel like they're not a part of the group. So I equated the bureaucratic theory to this because of the division and specialization of labor. You can work in records or in the jail or on warrant detail. And so they all have very specific, I guess, roles and job descriptions. And then a hierarchy of authority, deputies, sheriffs, captains. It fits almost all of the criteria. Actually, it fit all of the criteria that our book explained for bureaucratic theory, but for brevity, I'm not going to list each one. Trying to keep it within 7 minutes. Structuration theory, because the interactions between members are produced and continually reproduced by member interactions to create a collective attitude. The women perpetuated the culture just as much as the men. The sexist remarks, they kind of put each other against each other. Realistic job previews. It related to the case in many ways because Nicole knew she was entering a male-dominated field, but she didn't know that it would come with so many of the issues because it was so political and gender segregated, and she didn't know the women would be so tough on each other. She used role negotiation to help individualize her and the other women's organizational roles. When she talked to the sheriff at the end of the case study, she brought up potential for more training for the issues, along with resolutions when she talked to the sheriff to increase the opportunities for females to attend police school and communications workshops so the females could actually get along better. For organizational cynicism, she talks about how she spoke to another female deputy who mentioned that flirting is the only way she can take a break from all of the, and I quote, these were air quotes, from all the estrogen trapped inside the windowless cube they call an office. Ostracism was a facet. A male deputy spoke to her in a condescending tone, poking fun of her, and saying that, are they having a feminist revolution because of the newly appointed captain and there was females in the room. And she explains that the culture is masculine, sexist, male-driven, and generally treats women like second-class citizens. And as far as organizational identification goes, she identified herself as a compassionate, proud, and accomplished police officer, but within the organization, she felt like people identified her as someone who couldn't do their job, so she was constantly having to try to fight back against that. This study was really eye-opening to me. I was instantly on the defense against the men, and then I read more about the structuration theory, and I realized I didn't understand it, and I saw how much the women were actually perpetuating the negative behavior after I read more about it too, because like they would make the sexist remarks as well and, you know, try to not be involved with the females either. And the examples I used for my paper for the structuration theory were what came first, the chicken or the egg, or nature versus nurture. But I just think after this, it's really important to notice how much we need to emphasize inclusivity and stop these negative patterns in their tracks. Otherwise, it will become the whole basis of the organization. Thank you.